Hello, beautiful beings, and welcome back to the podcast, To the Core. I am your host, Carissa, but most people call me Core. To the Core is about getting to the root so we are able to identify the actual problem that needs to be solved. So often we go through life on autopilot, and all these things that are coming up in our physical reality are not actually what we need to pay attention to. But the root of it is important to understand so we can grow and hold ourselves accountable. On this podcast, we focus on self love, acceptance, and overall healing modalities so we are able to show up as our most authentic selves. Before we get into it, I would like to thank you for spending your valuable time listening and learning with me today, in addition to letting you know how proud I am that you showed up for yourself. I am a firm believer in consistency, so let's hold each other accountable and get right into it. Today's episode is the hidden cost of being an empath. We are going to be discussing how to navigate the world as an empath. And the first thing that I would like to make note of is that a lot of people view empathy as not this negative thing, but kind of this, it's heavy. It's like almost like a burden, I guess would be the word that I'm looking for. It feels like a burden, and it's because you feel everything. I am an empath and I get it. I sometimes say to myself, maybe I am just too sensitive for this world. So if you can relate to feeling that way, please stay and give this episode a listen. So hopefully you can walk away feeling lighter and able to navigate your world just a bit easier. All right, my friends, let's get right into it. So the first thing that I'd like to touch on is boundaries. As an empath, it can be very difficult to create boundaries, especially when you're surrounded by people who take. I will say that I've been on both sides, being around people who take and being around people who also give. People who are also empathic and give are never going to shit on you, pardon my language, for having boundaries. They're never going to make you feel like you're not giving enough or doing enough. And that's why it's firstly really important to put up boundaries, because that kind of weeds out the people who probably aren't meant to be in your life. And I know that that might be hard to hear for some of you, but unfortunately, it's the truth. Once I started creating boundaries, especially with people in my life who are narcissistic or people who are just kind of energy suckers, I noticed a change in energy, a shift of them kind of feeling like I bring less value to their life. And that has nothing to do with me. That's all the other person. And I want you to really remember that once you start creating boundaries, people will leave. I promise you they will, especially if you're someone who has been bending over backwards for years and you just finally are like, I need to create a boundary because this is actually hurting me. And the only thing that it's benefiting is the other person. And that's honestly doing a disservice to not only you, but to them. Because eventually, once you start choosing yourself, they're going to feel like their head is spinning and like confusion and all these different things. And honestly, that's not your problem. But I would say to avoid that, start creating boundaries today. Start saying no. No, I don't know who needs to hear this, but no, period, is a sentence. You don't have to explain why the answer is no. You don't. And if you feel like you do, maybe take a look at that relationship that you're in, whether it's a friend, a parent, a sibling, a partner. If somebody makes you feel guilty for saying no, look at that person and try and kind of get down to the root of why this person's in your life if you can't even tell them no without them throwing a fit. I've been there, and it's quite unfortunate realizing those things. The second thing I'd like to touch on is keeping your emotions separate from others. What I mean by this is, as an empath, we can walk into a room and feel other people's feelings. I honestly think I literally consider this my superpower. I can read any room that I'm in. And in the past, I've struggled with not only reading the room, but taking on everything that I'm picking up from the room: sadness, regret, shame, disappointment, just all of these different feelings that are heavy and they're not mine. When you go somewhere and you can automatically feel this vibrational darkness, almost is what you could call it, just this like heavy vibrational wavelength that feels so below on what you're vibrating on, I want you to take a step back and genuinely just take a few deep breaths and say to yourself, if you have to, these are not my emotions. This is not for me to feel. And just kind of checking yourself in that moment and reminding yourself that we all go through feelings, okay? We all have bad moments, bad days, bad years, rough freaking times. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not the type of person that's like, good vibes only. Well, I think that's beautiful. I think that we all go through stuff and we can't always be vibrating high. And I get that. That's okay. Like, that's not an expectation of people. But the thing is it's not on you to take that on either. So again, if you're feeling this way with people who are close to you or even strangers, I've literally been in positions, and even as a child, I will never forget this one time I looked at my dad and I was like, I feel bad for this person. And he looked at me and he was kind of like, why? And I'm like, I can't explain it. I just do. And that was me having an empathic moment and feeling someone else's sad freaking energy. And even as a child, I couldn't make sense of that. Like, why I felt bad for them, I didn't know, but I just did. So again, check yourself and do not take on other people's stuff, because the hard thing to hear is that feeling something for somebody else does not make them feel it less. You're not carrying a burden for them. You're just carrying it in addition to them. It's not taking anything away from them, if that makes sense. The next thing I would like to touch on is solving everyone's problems. That is not on you. People have problems. I understand you're an empath. You want to help. I get it. Same. But the thing you need to remember is that trying to solve other people's problems, again, is not only doing you a disservice, but also them. If you're causing yourself to go out of your way, you're not only resentful of the situation, but it's not your problem. When a problem comes up in your life, who solves it? You do, right? You solve the freaking problem, how you need to do it. So taking on other people's problems and trying to solve them, I get your intentions are good, but as an empath, it's literally harming you and it's harming the other person too. Give them enough credit to figure it out. We're all here for the first time in this life. This is all our first time living. Give them enough space and credit and belief that they will solve their problem. It is not yours to solve. Simple as that. Moving on to recharge time. I know as an empath, we love to connect. We love to vibe out. We love to be around people that makes us feel like our cup is being filled. And I get that. I just want to remind you that as an empath, you're taking on, again, everyone else's energy. And with that being said, you need extra rest because of that. There's a lot of people who can go about their day and they're not taking on other people's energy. And they can go, and nothing happens. But as an empath, you go here, you take some energy. You go here, you take some energy. You have a little argument with your partner, you take some energy. You have an uncomfortable conversation at work or maybe with a parent or a family member. You're taking on all of this energy. And then what is that doing to you? It's leaving you feeling completely depleted and maybe resentful. So take that extra time to recharge. The longer you take to recharge, the better you're able to show up for not only yourself, but for others. So take that extra time. And also try and learn your cues, your body cues, your spiritual cues, your mind cues of when it's time to take a step back and recharge. I have literally been in the middle of a party or the middle of being out with a friend or my partner participating in an activity, and my brain, my cue is I get a headache. That's the first thing that happens to me is I'll get this headache, and that is my body being like, you need to go relax, go rest, go recharge. You're starting to get burnt out, and before you get burnt out, let's take a step back and go into quiet time. So yeah, as an empath, go have your rest. It is one of the biggest just blessings to acknowledge that that's what you need in that moment, because a lot of people will just power through thinking that resting is not important. Trust me, especially for an empath, rest is super important, my loves. The next thing I'd like to touch on is friendships and relationships. As an empath, we tend to dive right in and we meet people, we feel connected to them, and we want to further that connection. I am guilty of this. I've been doing this my whole life where I meet somebody, I cling to them. It's not that I have put people on a pedestal, but I don't do that anymore, but I do find myself kind of seeing something in them that I am creating. They're not actually that. I am creating that for them. And it's not ideal for either party, to be honest. I've had to learn that the hard way. So as an empath, my biggest advice for you would to be approach all relationships, whether a friendship, a work relationship, a partnership, slowly and with ease. And I want you to mentally check on yourself once you're done spending time with this person. You can do this in a journal. You can do this out loud. You can even do this with someone that you trust and you feel safe with, to be like, hey, I want to make sure that, this relationship I'm getting into is healthy for me. And I'd kind of like to go over how I felt today or when I went and spent time with this person so I can further get feedback from you, somebody that I trust and love and that knows me well, about what you see from an outside perspective. Because once we are in it as empaths, we're in it. And I also think with empathy comes loyalty. I mean, I am a Libra, and in my sign is literal loyalty. I am loyal to a freaking fault. And that has done me a lot of harm. It's been a beautiful journey for sure. And I don't regret anything that I've done because it's helped me weed out what I know that I don't want, and it's helped me manifest and bring in what I know that I do want. And that's a beautiful thing in itself. So again, approaching any sort of friendship relationship with ease and at a slow pace is going to bring you a different outlook on what this relationship actually is. And if it's something that genuinely serves you and makes you feel full. The next thing I'd like to touch on is allowing yourself to feel and not feeling ashamed. As empaths, it comes with a lot of emotional and sensitive qualities. And again, I have literally been guilty of living life and being like, am I too sensitive for this world? Things feel so heavy for me. I mean, I was literally watching, I don't know if anybody knows what I'm talking about when I say this, but I was watching Barnyard last night. It's an animated movie that I really remember watching as a kid. And the cow, one of the cows, Ben, is defending all the chickens, and the wolves like kill him. And on the gravestone, it says, Ben, a good cow. And I'm sitting on the couch crying. It is an animated movie, Carissa. Why are you crying? Because I'm an empath. I can physically feel the animal sadness in an animated movie. It sounds so silly, but I'm also somebody who cries at birthday parties. I'm someone who cries at concerts. I'm someone who cries when people pass away who I don't even necessarily know, when people are sick, sometimes even when I see an older person who I can tell is not feeling well, I will literally cry, not even knowing this person. And I've had a lot of people in my life who have told me to stop being so sensitive and stop being so emotional. And while I don't blame them I don't think the intention was bad. I just think they couldn't understand. And so they wanted me to just stop. So I just wanted to remind you that if you have these feelings, it's okay. There's literally nothing to be ashamed of. Like, you are allowed to cry. You're allowed to feel. It's actually really good for you to purge and just feel. Because the longer we put off these emotions, when we finally do feel them, they're going to feel really heavy. If we feel them little by little, even though, yes, it feels intense in the moment, it's really important to feel that shit. Feel it. And don't feel ashamed, and don't let anybody tell you to stop crying. You cry, baby, you cry. It's important. It's good for you. All right. The last thing that I'd like to touch on is detaching when necessary, not because you're insensitive, but because you have to protect yourself and your peace. I think there's been a lot of relationships that I've been in that once I started showing up for them, no matter how little or shitty they showed up for me, I continued to show up because it was almost like my subconscious made a vow to this person. And detaching from them it would make me feel guilty and like I was doing something wrong. It made me feel like I was punishing them, and I wasn't. I wanted to choose myself. I wasn't doing it to them. I was doing it for me. I wasn't not showing up for them as best as I could because I didn't want to. It was because it was literally hurting me and it was bringing me down, and I couldn't continue to pour into this person when they couldn't even show up for me in the littlest ways. And it's really important to protect your peace. And I think I've been on all sides of the spectrum where I haven't protected my peace whatsoever. And I've literally put everybody else's needs and wants and desires before my own. And then I've also been on a different spectrum where I was a little bit ruthless. And I think I told myself I was protecting my peace, but I was actually avoiding. And that's another thing to look at is, am I protecting my peace or am I just being avoidant? I don't think there's anything wrong with being avoidant. I think, again, we have to do what we have to do in those moments to figure out who we truly are and figure out what we need and how we're going to thrive. But I think it is important to check yourself and say, is this me protecting my peace or me just not wanting to deal with this? And that's taken me a lot of different situations and a lot of hardships to come to conclusions of, yeah, no, this is for sure me protecting my peace. No doubt about that. And it's very important to do that for yourself and for people you love, because the more that you're showing up because you feel like you have to, or you feel like just this obligation to somebody, again, it's doing you both a disservice, and it's just harming you in the end. It's leaving you feeling depleted and like this person just sucked all of your energy out, and now you have nothing left to even give yourself. So I want you to really, really work on protecting your peace. And again, if it helps, sit down, write it out. What in my life right now is not bringing me peace? What is harming me? What habits or cycles am I continuing to do that's not protecting me and my higher self? The way that I think about it, not only as my higher self, but if my best friend was coming to me and saying these things, oh, I'm doing this because I feel like I have to, or, well, this person did me a favor, and so now I feel like I owe them my life, and I'm going to continue to show up and show up and show up, even though it leaves me feeling so depleted and just sad and empty. What would you tell your best friend? Would you tell them, yeah, like, you're doing the right thing, like, keep showing up, like, even though it's hurting? No. You would look at your best friend, no, baby, time to take a step back and not do this. You deserve to protect yourself. Maybe no one ever has. Maybe you're the one. No one's coming to save you. Nobody. But you can save yourself. You can protect your peace. No one else is literally going to do that for you. And I also want to remind you that you don't need a reason to put up a boundary. You don't. You can have a boundary to have a boundary. You do not need a reason. You don't. Okay? So I just want to thank you again for showing up for yourself with me today. I love learning with you. I love growing with you. I'm so grateful that I'm able to just come on here and talk about the hard things that is hard to talk about. I'm always going to want to talk about the hard things because most of my life I've been silenced and I've asked questions and have been told not to question things. And I'm done. I've been done. I'm showing up authentically and as loudly, and I am taking up space. And I really genuinely encourage you to do the same. You are a beautiful being and you have a lot of good things to say. Okay? I don't want you to ever forget that. I just want you to know that you are loved. I see you, I value, and I respect you. And I am so, so, so grateful that you're here with me. If you could please give the podcast a rating if you feel called to, if you feel any of this resonates with you and you'd like to follow up more, please drop a comment. I'd love to connect with you. Again, I'm so grateful that you're here with me today, and I'm super excited to continue to talk about the hard stuff and genuinely to just get to the core of making sure that you're living your most authentic and aligned life and you're able to thrive and love yourself and others. Okay, my loves, thank you again for showing up, and until next time, bye.